and welcome back to the Football Tribe channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Friday morning, 41 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. The reason as to why I usually come later than 9 sharp is to try and accommodate our friends over there in Europe whose timelines have changed by an hour behind us. So usually 9 a.m. means 6 a.m. for them, and some are still, asleep. So to try and accommodate them, we extended by, 30, 40 minutes to have them join us. But it's a pleasure to be back once again on this beautiful Friday morning, yet again, to discuss the latest from the world of football, but particularly I will be looking forward to what's to come our way in as far as the weekend fixtures are concerned. Plenty of action is going to be coming our way. Of course, Spanish La Liga, Premier League enters match day 14. Match day 15, apologies. Action is beginning to come thick and fast. As we've said before, that will be the case, or that will be the norm throughout the month of December. We are edging to the halfway point of the season, so we have gotten out after 14, 15 games played. You start to get away from that phrase of, it's still early in the season, as we, move towards the halfway point of the season. So we'll be saying it's halfway point of the season, and this is how you look, this is how your team looks like, this is what you should be readying yourself for, and perhaps the expectations should be this. Is the table shaping up the way we hoped it will be shaping up? Are your teams living to the expectations? Yes and no, depending on what side of the aisle you do fall upon. And then we know for a fact that last night was a bit of a disappointing, night if you're a Manchester United fan, because they considered that, 1-0, that 1-0, a lead in that game against West Ham to draw 1-1, a prediction that we had on this channel, that the game would end as such. And particularly because I thought, I looked at what was going to differentiate the two teams, and it wasn't much there to begin with. And when you looked at the starting lineups, of course, both were pretty strong. United having the better one, being at home, that was another advantage for Manchester United. But you looked at both benches, and they did not promise to give you that you would have loved. I thought the changes made by Ruben Amorim were quite questionable on the night, because, you're leading the game by a 1-0, and according to the Premier League website, by the way, Bruno Fernandes was given man of the match. I would have given it to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I thought he had a very, very good game, defensively particularly, for that West Ham side, So, again, for a team that has only kept one clean sheet this season, and that was against Sunderland, a game they managed to win by 2-0. That was, I think, prior to the October international break. You look at that and think to yourself, really, why are you taking off your attacking players with quarter an hour to go, when it's not like West Ham were making it very easy for them? Yes, I understand you want to try and start protecting that lead, but the way you protect that lead is bringing in energy in midfield. That's where the Kobe Minos, the Manuel Ugatis come in, and then you bring on an attacker, which they did not have really on the bench in the absence of Benjamin Sesko. So I thought to myself, why then make those changes? Because in the 77th minute, they will bring on Manuel Ugarte for Matthias Cunha. Now, they bring on Joshua Zirkzee in the subsequent minute for Mason Mount. That was okay, fairly okay. Although, Mason Mount should have come on for Cunha, and you retain Zirkzee. And then Luke Shaw gets withdrawn for Lisandro Martinez. Now, guys, I said this during the course of the game, for those of you that were part of our watch along for that particular fixture last night, that if there's anything you can guarantee in a game of football for Manchester United, regardless of how it's going, is that Ruben Amorim will make a centre back change. Now, again, the centre back changes came at halftime. They withdrew Aiden Heaven for Lenny Euro. I do not know why Lenny Euro didn't start from the onset. Which I said, okay, that's okay, because Aiden Heaven had already a booking. He had the booking, he had the yellow card, so you didn't want to risk him getting a red card in the game, so that's understandable. But then, when do you actually make the changes for other defensive positions? Diego Dalot for Patrick Dogu, winger, that didn't seem too smart, by the way, because that was the second quickest substitution that he made in the 68th minute. And of course, Lisandro Martinez coming on for Luke Shaw. Let's on, because West Ham had a very lightweight bench, they only made 3 changes. Andy Iving, Muhammad Kanute, and Max Kilman. That's what happened for West Ham, really. So, for me, I found some of his substitutions are really questionable. 2, United lacked the cutting edge, especially in the final third. That through pass, that efficient through ball sort of eluded them on multiple occasions. Then they had 2 golden opportunities to make it to win it. That was through Bruno Fernandes, and he failed with both occasions. And that's how it ended. 58th minute goal. Diego Dalot, who I thought had a lot of time in that box to put the ball in the back of the net, because I think it's Casemiro who attempts a shot. It's deflected on, and it ends up in the control of Diego Dalot right at the center of that 18 yards box, and he scores, sending Alfonso Areola the opposite way, and it's 1-0. And then later on in the game, and I kept saying this because that's the nature of the game, that for as long as you maintain a 1-0 lead, it's too small a lead. It's narrow. You live on the edge. You feel that anytime you're going to get accosted. You're one blunder away from a 1-1. You're a one lapse of concentration from a 1-1. And practically that's what happened in the 83rd minute. When Magasa scores, it's a corner kick. I think it was Nusa Mazorui clears the ball off the line, literally, and then the ball falls to Magasa, who gets an attempt, and he scores. And it's 1-1, and the rest, the job is as good as done. And that's how it ended up in a 1-1 draw. Now, again, I talked about the significance of what a victory could have meant for a team like Man United. They have gotten a win yesterday, because it meant they would have gone 5th. And the beauty of this Premier League table is because the teams between second and around 10th, the point disparity is not too huge. The point disparity is not too huge, because if United had won, they would have gone to 24 points, which put them square which would have put them square with Chelsea, and then they would have been 4 points behind Man City and 3 behind Aston Villa. So really, when you assess it in that way, or when you look at, for example, Everton, who are 10th on the Premier League log, it's only 7 points that separate them from Manchester City in second place. That's how small the gap is. And when you assess through the teams that come in between there, anybody just needs to win 3 consecutive games, really all these others get themselves in a mix-up here and there, with a couple of draws or a loss, wherever they can afford one, and suddenly you're within the top 4. So basically that's what happened. United had a good opportunity. They didn't take it away, because the reason that's why I say it's a good opportunity, you're playing a team that is third from bottom. You're playing a team that is third from bottom. Yes, you've beaten up a 6th place as Sunderland, but a team that is third from bottom is a team you shouldn't be putting away. Is a team you should be is a team that you should manage to, blow away. Allow me answer this. Hello. Ndiku broadcast ngamaze. So really, you look at it in that sense and think to yourself, Man United, when are you going to be consistent? You, over the weekend, they won a more difficult game when they beat up against Crystal Palace. We're talking about a Crystal Palace side that until match day until match day 13, had only lost 2 games in the Premier League. They inflicted their 3rd defeat. So you've gone away to Selhurst Park, which is a more sort of hostile environment to go into and win a game of football. Those goals from Mason Mount and Joshua Zirkzee cancelling out Matita's goal. And you're thinking to yourself, you've done the hard work. Now, it doesn't make West Ham any easier, but in comparison, West Ham becomes, by that virtue of that fact, an easier opponent to take on. When you look at the two teams in comparison, this season and last season, Crystal Palace have looked the more stable team. West Ham is fighting for their life. They're fighting against relegation. And I think you had to go back to, was it, you remember that 2007, game between West Ham and United, for which Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano caused all sorts of troubles for Man United to the extent that they wanted to send them both, only that they could only take one, which was Carlos Tevez, and Mascherano ended up with Liverpool and things like that. So for me, in terms of the game itself on the pitch, United were dominant on the ball. But I said this before, give United the ball, they won't know what to do with it because they had a 65% ball possession compared to 35% of West Ham. They did not know what to do with that ball. They knocked it around, and after conceding the equalizer, they did not have, you felt that they lacked that urgency of putting the ball quite forward, and eventually, it just didn't happen for them. And nor should it, because they did not create the environment for it to happen. They did not create the environment for it to happen. Really. So, for me, I feel like this one will be on Ruben Amorim. The same way, I think yesterday we were saying that the Wednesday defeat to Chelsea was on Maresca's hands. Yeah, these two drop points were on no other than Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim strictly. There's no hiding from it, because it's not like he's so new to the Premier League now, having made their 1 year. You assess teams. You know how difficult it is, especially for a team that has not kept only 1 clean sheet. That fact alone should be a reminder to you that that being in a 1-0 lead is not huge a cushion, And I told you that clean sheet came against Sunderland, a very, very tough opponent, by the way. So you give them that credit. But all the other games they've been conceding, whether they've lost, whether they've drawn, whether they've won. Now, if they're conceding every game, that means there are questions defensively. And like I've often said, the defensive part of the game doesn't begin with the defenders. It begins with those that lose the ball, whether you're far up in the final third, whether you're in midfield. And for me, in midfield, I have question marks over this Man United side. I do not think Bruno Fernandes is a number 8. Yes, sometimes it works and he performs really well, but in the larger context of things, in the larger scheme of things, that shouldn't be the case for me. That shouldn't be the case for me. But because, again, you see, the rigidity of Ruben Amorim to stay within the mold of the 3-4-2-1 kind of system, and I know it's just a system, how you apply yourself on the pitch matters, but also the way you assemble team matters, because when you have that 1-0 lead, why don't you retreat to a back 4, accommodate, make it, have another midfielder in there, instead of you taking on Casemiro, just introduce when they take off Diego Dalot, just shift that, and you, of course, that means because it was Amadou Diallo who, and then they brought on Patrick Dogu, but shift into a back four, go for a three midfield thing, and then you have your two tens. That means that Bruno Fernandes will have the luxury of playing at the tip of that triangle of the midfield, and that gives you a bit more spine going forward. So whereas systems are not everything, they're not entirely to blame for everything. They are a factor because it has an implication on how your team applies itself. So, but they just lacked that cutting edge. That final pass was really, really not coming. It was always poor. And yeah, I felt they fell short in that regard. And unfortunately for Man United, the weekend is not going to get any easier because match day 15, like I said, gets underway, and they will be playing. They will be playing on Monday. Sorry, yes, they will be playing on Monday away to Molineux Stadium, away to Wolves. That's their next fixture. Now, the advantage for them again is that Wolves is a team that has not won a single Premier League game this season. Could United be their first victory? Because over the last two games, even though they've been beaten, they've not looked that bad on paper. So, anyways, we'll leave that at that. Here's what's to come on match day 15 on the Premier League, starting tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. East African time. Aston Villa hosts Arsenal at the Villa Park. Then at 6 p.m., we have as many as 5 games. Bournemouth at home at the Vitality Stadium against Chelsea. Nottingham Forest travel to the Hill-Dixon Stadium to take on Everton. Manchester City will be at home against Sunderland. Newcastle at St. James's Park once again take on Burnley, while Tottenham Hotspur will be at home against Brentford. And in the late kickoff of Saturday at 8:30 p.m., Leeds United will entertain Liverpool at Elland Road. And then on Super Sunday, we'll have 2 games. Brighton at 5 p.m. against West Ham United, while at 7:30 p.m., Fulham will be up against Crystal Palace. And then on Monday night, we'll wrap up match day 15 with that game between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Manchester United. Do not forget, next week there will be the UEFA Champions League, UEFA Europa League, and UEFA Conference League, but we'll get to that when the time comes. Right now, we're going to be digesting some of these fixtures really and see what the implications are, what's at stake for these teams, and where better to start than the early kickoff. Now, in the early kickoff between Arsenal and Aston Villa, is the main concern is Arsenal's injury list. Now, whereas they have been blessed to welcome back some of their stars that had been out on injury, they are losing others to injury. And it seems to be like a gift that continues to keep on giving. It's not different from what it is last season, essentially, by the way. The only difference is that Arsenal this time around have a bit of more squad depth compared to the last season. And when you look at some of the injuries that they've had so far this season, Bukayo Saka, Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus got injured last season, Victor Gyökeres, Martin Odegaard, 3 injuries. You look at Gabriel Magalhaes, William Saliba, Christian Mosquera, Gabriel Martinelli at one point, Leandro Trossard. I mean, that's just too many injuries. Declan Rice was withdrawn off the other day through injury. Noni Madueke is the other. That's 12 injuries that we've just, given off of our fingertips, and that's the majority of it. Now, really, and when Christian Mosquera went off, I remember Mikel Arteta, I think, speaking in the post-match press conference to that and saying they weren't sure what the problem was, whether it was with his ankle or his knee. But the way he landed, after clearing that ball, he felt the discomfort. And even if it was minor discomfort, they won't look to rush Christian Mosquera back in because they know the implications of that. In midweek, I think their game is going to be up against Club Brugge, in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. So if I do remember correctly, I stand to be corrected, but I think that will be the point. So already coming into this game, Arsenal are disadvantaged. Kai Havertz is out, Gabriel Magalhaes is out, Leandro Trossard is still out, William Saliba is out, Christian Mosquera is out. Declan Rice went off through injury. Now, I know Declan Rice has since told Sky Sport that he is fine. And, you know, he could be fine in the sense of, you know how you injure yourself and do not notice, but then when you go to the bathroom and probably you're taking a bath, you're like, oh, when did I scratch myself? Or if you, or in the heat of the moment, when you're still fresh off the pitch, you may not feel certain things. But then when you retreat back home and get yourself relaxed before you get into that ice bath that footballers normally get into, or before you get into the pool, but when you go and relax your body now and get that sleep, that's when you wake up and you're like, oh, I have a swollen ankle. You know, that's a result from the other game. So whereas Declan Rice said he is okay, we know he's played so many minutes, and I would have hoped that was the game to, you know, sort of rest him a bit, because before he gets off through injury, I was one of those that was already calling for his substitution, saying, get him off, you know, bring on Christian Nogard, let him help with Zubimendi in that midfield, you know. Now, I don't know what's happened particularly. I know Christian Nogard has suffered himself an injury at some point because he did not start the season. Now, you go out and sign a player like Christian Nogard with all his experience, captain of Brentford at the time. You bring him in, and we are heading towards the halfway point of the season, and he's hardly played a game in the Premier League. And I'm thinking to myself, Mikel Arteta, you're running Declan Rice tired, and you have Christian Nogard. Now, I know the two are not the same players, you know, but they are central midfielders. That's the gist of it. And I made this argument. For those of you that, again, remember, when Arsenal signed Martin Zubimendi, I said the beauty of Martin Zubimendi is that he can play as a 6, he can play as an 8. So that means when you bring on Christian Nogard, Nogard plays as a 6, Zubimendi goes into the 8 role, and he can execute that pretty well, you know. So sometimes the delay to make changes or the hesitation to make changes is what costs Aston in the long process. How many players have gone off injured, and by the time they go off injured, you felt Mikel Arteta should have already made a substitution on them? It has happened. Maybe more often than we care to admit, really, if you're very, very observant. So for me, I thought that in itself was an issue. Now, going away to Aston Villa, you're going to need a player of Declan Rice's lungs, whether it's for 60 minutes, whether it's for 45 minutes, whether it's for 70 minutes, whether it's for 75. You're going to need him. You're going to need him. Now, I do understand why he did not make the decision to rest him, because when you have a backline that is new in Christian Mosquera and Pierre Hincap, we all know how Declan Rice helps defensively, and how sometimes he shifts into that defensive, through mold to make like the shape of a back three for defenders. We saw that against Chelsea. We know he does that, and he does that to take care of a partnership that they as a team know is not as good as William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, so they need to provide cover for that, you know. So I understand it in that perspective and context, but I felt he should have been substituted off by the time he gets injured. But it is what it is. Anyways, we'll be waiting to hear from Mikel Arteta himself, I think today afternoon, to see on, because there's an expectation that Leandro Trossard could be back. There's an expectation that William Saliba could make training, last team training, and feature in the game against Aston Villa. But should that not be the case, then we're going to look at what their team could look like without those players. So let's hope that they can have at least Trossard back, Declan Rice and William Saliba. I think those would do them a huge favor, because speaking prior to the game against Brentford, he said Kai Havertz is still a matter of weeks. Same applies to Gabriel Magalhaes. Now we do not know what's happened with Christian Mosquera. For Aston Villa, the injuries are quite few. It's Ross Barkley and Tyrone Mings. Otherwise, the rest of their team is really, really looking pretty set. So Arsenal have a somehow a difficult run of fixtures, like we've talked about this December, because they have Aston Villa, after which they will play Wolverhampton Wanderers, in between which there's the UEFA Champions League game. They will play Everton. After Everton, in between there, they have a game against Crystal Palace in the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup. Then they have Brighton, they have Aston Villa again. That will be on the 30th of December. So Aston Villa, besides the doubleheader against Arsenal, have West Ham, Man United, and Chelsea in between. And we're talking about arguably one of the most informed teams that there is in the English Premier League, having faltered in their first, I think, 4 games at the start of the season. They've been quite immaculate in their last 8. In their last, I think, having faltered in the first, I think about 4 games of the season. They've been quite immaculate in their last 9. I think winning 8 of those, really losing only to Liverpool by 2-0, including beating up against Manchester City by 1-0. For those of you that remember that, that fixture. So, coming into this game, again, Aston Villa know what's at stake. They're 27 points, Aston at 33. They know for a fact that if they do win that game, they get the opportunity not to close. They get the opportunity to move second, at least as they wait for the result between Manchester City and Sunderland. Okay, just a second. I see we have a comment from Riz. Riz Imran. Riz Imran, do you support any team? Yes, I do support some teams, but I do support football first. It's football first, then my allegiance to other teams comes in. I do support Arsenal, I do support Real Madrid. I love the Brazil national team, so I do support Brazil, and the Uganda Cranes, of course. So, but yeah, in general, it's my love for football. But thanks for asking, Imran. Where are you joining us from? Can I assume it's Pakistan because of Imran Khan, the former prime minister? Anyways, let's not get into that. But do let me know where you're joining us from this beautiful morning. So that's what's at stake in as far as the context of the Premier League table is concerned for Aston Villa. That if they win that game, they move second, only 3 points behind Arsenal, and as they wait for a result between Manchester City and Sunderland, which could go either way, given how Manchester City have behaved in the last couple of games. But also, the writing is on the wall for Arsenal. What the implications are: win the game, move on. Make sure it's 9 points ahead of Aston Villa, as it is 9 ahead of Chelsea, who lost to Leeds. Currently, it's 5 points ahead of Manchester City. Win that game, Man City play later. You never know, they could falter against Sunderland. Maybe they draw, maybe they get beat. And you create another health gap. Maybe you extend that point lead to possibly 7 or 8, So that's what is at stake for the Arsenal. Apologies. So really, that should be the case, that's in the context of the table. In regards to the last 5 meetings between the two sides, either side have won the fixture twice. Really, there's been 1 draw. Last season, Arsenal beat up against Aston Villa by 2-0 at Villa Park. Really, the subsequent fixture ended in a 2-2 draw at the Emirates Stadium. When you go back to last season, but 1, 2023-2024, Aston Villa, we know, accosted Arsenal the Premier League title when they beat Arsenal home and away, 1-0 and by 2-0 at the Emirates Stadium. Goes by Leon Bailey and Oli Watkins, So then when you go back to around February 2023, when during the 2022-2023 campaign, when Arsenal were once again pushing for the Premier League title, we know they went away to Villa Park and beat up against Aston Villa by 4 goals to 2. I think what's his name? The former Philippe Coutinho was among the goal scorers. If not the only goal scorer for Aston Villa in that game. And then Bukayo Saka scored for Arsenal, Gabriel Martinelli scored for Arsenal, Alexander Zinchenko scored for Arsenal, and an own goal from Emi Martinez. So it was Coutinho and Oli Watkins. By the way, Aston Villa's goals came quite quick or early in that game, because they scored in the 50th minute, released Bukayo Saka, restored parity in the 16th minute, and in the 31st minute of the game, Coutinho scored to make it 2-1, and it was 2-1 at halftime. So it was in the second half that Zinchenko, 61st minute, got the equalizer to score his first goal for the Arsenal. And then in the 93rd minute, you remember that Jorginho thunderbolt of a shot that hits the crossbar and bounces back, hits the inside of the crossbar, I think, and bounces back to beat in to deflect off the back of Emi Martinez to end up in the back of the net to make it 3-1. And in the 8th minute of stoppage time, Gabriel Martinelli scoring in an empty net. So famously, that's the fixture. So in terms of teams, we know that Aston Villa has a very, very strong team. But I think before we get to their team shape, when you look at, like I said, when you look at the last 5 games in the Premier League, Aston Villa have one of the most decent forms. They've only lost one in the last 5, and that loss is what came up against Liverpool on match day 10 by 2-0. Really, they've beaten up against Bournemouth 4-0. They've beaten up against Leeds 2-1. They've beaten up against Wolves by 0-0. They've beaten up against Brighton by 4-3. Arsenal, on the other side, have drawn 2 of the last 5 and won 3, winning against Burnley, against Tottenham, and against Brentford. Released the draws game against Sunderland and Chelsea. So you can see that Arsenal have managed to collect 11 points out of a possible 15. Released Aston Villa have collected 12 out of the possible 15. So in terms of points gathered in the last 5, Aston Villa are the better side. So then let's look at what possibly teams could they line up or start with, starting with the home team in Aston Villa. How could they assemble their team? I think Emi Martinez will be in goal, Ezri Konsa and Pau Torres. I do not expect changes to that defensive duo. Matty Cash and Ian Maatsen, I would be surprised if Lucas Digne comes in for this one. Instead of Ian Maatsen, Amadou Onana alongside Boubacar Kamara. I suspect this could be the game that you need Yuri Tielemans. But Morgan Rogers will be maintained. Ivan Guessand could pave the way, and you have John McGinn pushed outwards, and then they accommodate Yuri Tielemans. Ivan Guessand could be the one that gets sacrificed, and then Oli Watkins to lead the lines. But should they maintain the team that started away to Brighton, I wouldn't be surprised nonetheless. So on the side of Arsenal, given the injuries that we've enlisted, assuming that none returns, then you'd expect David Villa in goal. You'd expect Pierre Hincap in that defense alongside Yuan Timber, Ricardo Carafiori at left back, and Ben White at right back. Had a man of the match performance against Brentford. In midfield, you'd expect Martin Zubimendi. You'd expect Mikel Merino in the absence of Declan Rice. You'd expect Martin Odegaard. Then you'd expect Ebelechi Eze, Bukayo Saka, and Victor Gyökeres. Nonetheless, and again, this is speculation, because he could also go with Zubimendi, Odegaard, and Ebelechi Eze for that midfield trio. And then you have Mikel Merino leading the lines. You have Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli or Noni Madueke, So that is equally also a possibility in terms of how Arsenal could set up against Aston Villa. It will depend on what their tactical analysis will look like in terms of how they have to go about that game. But personally, for me, that's how I would expect that team to sort of set up, in as far as a probable lineup is concerned. So let's wait and see if that will be the case. But like I said, today we will hear from Mikel Arteta in regards to if there's any prospects for the return of Leandro Trossard, because if Leandro Trossard is back, then he could start at the left side of the wing. He's been one of the effective players that they've had so far this season. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, we'll leave that at that. I think I should give my prediction. Now, I don't know. My instincts have that this game could end in a draw. Maybe 1-1 or 2-2. But it's so close. And they've just played one too many games. Both sides. Because where Arsenal go and play in the UEFA Champions League, Aston Villa play in the UEFA Europa League. And the time for recovery has been very little, to say the least, for both sides. So it's not like one has the advantage over the other in terms of resting time. That's not the case, That's not the case here. So I don't know. I do not have too much faith in Arsenal. Forgive my skepticism that they could lose 2-1, as well as they could win 2-1. But that feeling of a draw is just not going away just yet. So it's an early kickoff. We know how difficult early kickoffs can be. I'd go 1-1 or 2-1 Aston Villa. I don't know. I'm not my expectations of Arsenal winning are non-existent at best. Anyways, let's move on to the other fixture. Chelsea away to Bournemouth. I do not think, besides the bottom three, there's a team with a worse form than Bournemouth, because Bournemouth have lost 4 of their last 5 fixtures in the Premier League, and they've only managed 1 draw. Out of a potential 15 points, they've only picked up 1. They lost to Man City 3-1, lost to Aston Villa 4-0. They drew against West Ham 2-2, lost to Sunderland 3-2 last weekend, and lost to Everton in midweek by 1-0. In comparison, Chelsea on the other side have only lost 1 of their last 5. That was the 3-1 loss to Leeds. They beaten up against Spurs 1-0, Wolves 3-0, Burnley 2-0, and 1-1 against Arsenal. So there's a huge disparity in terms of form. When you look at their last 5 meetings, Chelsea have had the lion's share, winning the fixture on 3 different occasions. The other have been draws. Now, Chelsea know the trouble they drove themselves into following that defeat at Elland Road. I think they will be looking to recover and bounce back from that defeat. They'll be looking to bounce back from that defeat. So really, for me, I'm thinking, I'm looking at it and thinking that Chelsea, this is the opportunity they have to sort of bounce back. And the reason as to why I'm thinking that is, you have, of course, they're going to be without Moises Caicedo. They're going to be without, Caicedo is the key miss. Then they get to bring back their back line. I think Trevor Chalobah, Wesley Fofana, Malo Gusto at right back, Marco Correa at left back. In midfield, it will be Reece James alongside Enzo Fernandez, and I think Andre Santos gets dropped to the bench, and then Cole Palmer ahead of them, then Pedro Neto, Joao Pedro, and Alejandro Garnacho. That's how they could set up. And I honestly think that even as good as a team that they do have, Bournemouth, that they'll beat up against Chelsea. I think Chelsea will get 1 over them, I see. So really, I look at it in the sense that Bournemouth have been so bad. If this is one of the other, for a team that you've beaten up against 3 times in the last 5, this is another huge opportunity for you to beat up against them. Pedrovic, a former Chelsea goalkeeper, is expected to be in goal for Bournemouth. Diakite, Miloslav, of course, has been filling in for what's his name? I'm trying to remember. Marco Senesi, Adrian Trafford in there, Gimenez, Tyler Adams, then Scott, Semenyo, Justin Kluivert, Kroipi, and then Adil. Of course, Evan Nelson has not had it really good for him. Who is the other? There's a name I'm trying to look for that usually plays in that pocket of space where you have a Kluivert playing. Marcus Tavernier, yes, Marcus Tavernier. Really, so for me, I'm not saying this should be an easy game for Chelsea, but it should be a winnable game for Chelsea. You need to respond. You need to bounce back. The last thing you'd want is lose 2 games of the spin or lose a game and draw a game, especially when you're playing away to the Vitality Stadium. And I'm not saying it's an easy place to go to. It's never an easy place to go to. We saw the kinds of troubles that Bournemouth caused teams last season, including beating up against Aston home and away. I think they beat up against Man City by 2-1. Really, it's not an easy place to go, But for Chelsea, bring back those players that you rested in midweek, whether it was out of necessity and it cost you. That was a huge drop off, and win this game of football. So I'm going to go Chelsea to win 2-1 for that particular fixture. That's going to be my prediction. And okay, then the other game is going to be between Everton and Nottingham Forest. That one, I simply give my prediction. Everton, Nottingham Forest. Everton are very inconsistent. They beat up against Man United by 0-0. Got thumped by Newcastle 4-1. Idris Ganagwe among those returning from suspension, I think, should be expected. Then you have then they went midweek and beat up against Bournemouth by 0-0. Nottingham Forest did, a return to winning ways in midweek when they won by 0-0 away to Wolverhampton Wanderers to recover from their defeat on match day 13, in which they lost to Brighton by 2-0. So I'm thinking this could end in I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw between the two sides, both playing that long ball and stuff like that. Typical English football. Burnley, Newcastle have no excuses whatsoever. They know what's at stake in terms of the Premier League table. They know that if they win that fixture against Burnley, they rise from 12th place and get to 22 points, rise within anywhere between 10th and 7th, around that ballpark. And I do not think you're going to get more winnable fixtures than Burnley at St. James's Park. So I'm going to go 3-1 for Newcastle against Burnley. I know that their recent form is not questionable. If they beat up against Everton 4-1, they drew against Tottenham Hotspur 2-2. I thought it was a deserved result for them to draw. Then when you wind things further back, they beat up against Man City. So they've won 2 of the last 3, which is not bad. So go ahead and, add that Burnley victory to it. So I'm going 3-1 in favor of Newcastle, even without going into a lot of depth into that one, because Newcastle have been really, really dominant in this fixture. In fact, Burnley have not beaten up against Newcastle in any of their last 5 meetings. So really, it's really, really important to note that way. Then quickly, looking at the other fixture is going to be between Tottenham Hotspur and Brentford. London Derby. Brentford come up against their former manager in Thomas Frank. Things have not gone really, really well for him in recent weeks, but and then they do not have a very, very good form at home. However, Brentford are bad travelers themselves. Brentford are very, very bad travelers themselves. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, apologies. So really, I'm thinking to it and I'm saying, Tottenham Hotspurs are very unreliable. Their form at home has been poor. They got beat there. I think it was by Bournemouth, 1-0. You remember, very early on in the season. At Chelsea, beat them by 1-0. Could have been more. 2-2 against Man United. They just got beat by Fulham by 2-1 at home. I mean, Out of the last 5 fixtures, they have 2 draws and 3 defeats. So their form is not good, not at all. Not that that of Brentford is any good because they've equally been beat up against 3 times in the last 5, but they have won 2, beating up against Newcastle 3-1 and Burnley 3-1. Really, they lost to Crystal Palace 2-0 and to Brighton 2-1 and to Arsenal 2-0. So, but my point is, Tottenham at home have been very, very poor. Now, Tottenham have dominated this fixture, winning 3 of their last 5 meetings between the two sides. There has been 1 draw and 1 victory for Brentford. That was in May 2023. When Brentford went to Tottenham Hotspur and won that game by 3-1. It's easy to sit here and I say Thomas Frank knows the ins and outs of that Brentford team, knows Keith Andrews, employed him as a coach there last December and now he's manager. I could make that argument. But that argument alone is not enough to win him a game of football against Brentford. It's not enough. The way they and the painful thing is that it doesn't have much to do with their team in terms of composition of that team. That team essentially should be good enough. Vicario Cristiano Romero was back in the absence of Mickey van der Ven, who started actually on the bench. They went for Kevin Danso, Pedro Porro against Newcastle. I thought had a fairly good game. Destin Udogi, not so good a game. Pape Mata alongside Rodrigo Bentancur, Lucas Bagville, Kudus Johnson, and Randall Kolomwani. Kolomwani has been looking sharp. He's just not managed to get the goals and things like that. And then, I expect some changes to this team. For example, Mickey van der Ven to return in the setup alongside Cristiano Romero, who scored a brace, by the way, against Newcastle, which earned them the draw, the valuable point. I would go for maybe Dejad Space to start at right back. I'd bring back Joao Paulinho in there. I would play him alongside Bentancur and Pape Mata. Or actually, I'd go with Bagfield, Bentancur, and Pape Mata, and I keep it that way, for that midfield. Because you do not want to be too defensive. You do not need a double pivot of 2 number 6s in that sense. Then Kudus returns, Kolomwani returns. None of those guys, none of Matthias Telles, Wilson Odegaard, Rickarlson, Xavi Simons, none of them has done enough to say, I'll unseat Brennan Johnson. Not that Brennan Johnson has done any better himself, but I look at it that way. And I would go with the same team and bet my chances against Brentford. Now, Brentford they did rest some players, by the way, in their loss against Arsenal. So the likes of Igor Thiago, who is the Premier League's second top scorer with 11 goals, started off the bench, and he was just simply brought on, and you'll be hoping that he gets to start this game and cause that Tottenham backline all sorts of troubles. Tottenham will be very vulnerable on set pieces, whereas Thomas Frank, it's one of the things that Thomas Frank looked to correct really from the onset. The way he's drilled them in set pieces, in terms of defending them, and in terms of trying to win them or scoring off of them. And you remember one of the goals against Newcastle was a result of a poorly defended set piece that he sort of volleys into the back of the net. That was Cristiano Romero. But still, for me, they look a bit vulnerable. When Kayode comes in with those long throw-ins, when they float in the corners, you saw what Kevin Schade almost did to Arsenal, and we have to be wary of that. I don't know, but I'm going to go and trust Tottenham to win this game by 2-1. To win it by 2-1. I'm thinking, even though they've been so poor at home, I'm thinking, Thomas Frank, don't get done by your apprentice, really. Do not get done by your apprentice, I mean, it took so many, when you go away from the first half season for Mikel Arteta, it took so many seasons for him to get one over Pep Guardiola, you know. So really, I'm hoping that that doesn't happen to Thomas Frank here. Anyways, quickly, let's head into the Man City game. I do not think there's a Premier League team that wants to take on Sunderland. At least not in this moment. Best case scenario, they would rather face them when, I don't know, 5, 6 or even more of their players go for the Africa Cup of Nations. The likes of Chamsdine Talbi, the Moroccan international, the likes of Noah Sadiki, you know, because they do have plenty of those, by the way, in terms of African players. So, but Manchester City, they've looked shaky and they've conceded so many goals in recent times. And whereas I remember early on in the season, we spoke about them and they were one of the defensively better sides. But today, as we look at their backline, Sunderland and Crystal Palace have conceded fewer goals than Man City, with Sunderland conceding 14 and Crystal Palace 11. I think Crystal Palace has the second best defense next to Arsenal, you know. So, Man City conceded 2 against Leeds, conceded 4 against Fulham, that's 6 goals in 2 games. They conceded 2 against Newcastle, that's 8 in 3 games. When you bring in the UEFA Champions League, they conceded 2 against Bayer Leverkusen without even responding. So if you're Sunderland, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, Man City, you can't score against them. In terms of form, they've won 4 of the last 5. That's what it will say. And this is why I also keep saying that sometimes it matters less how you win, but the fact that you win. And for Manchester City, it's all about, especially particularly in this stage of the season, it's all about keeping up pace with it's all about keeping pace with Arsenal. Do not let that gap grow so big. And for as long as they remain in that mold, the ends will justify the means, you know, at the end of the day. So the way Man City are looking at it, the way Pep Guardiola is looking at it, I'm not sure he would be overly bothered that they're conceding too much, you know. It will be an issue, but he won't be overly bothered because he would rather win 5-4 or 3-2 than win 1-0. He would rather that on any given day. That's Pep Guardiola. Now, for them, it's all about getting into March, April, and the point difference between them and Aston is just 5, is just 7. No more than that, or even 4. And then when we get into the final bend of the season, in the final at 12, 10, 8 games, that's when it matters the most. And we know that's when they click in gear. Usually for them, it starts within the last 16, 14 games. And then they go on that winning run of 14 consecutive games. And before you know it, they've clinched the Premier League title. They've done it so many times that when you look in the rear view mirror and you see Man City coming, you cannot help it run looking over your shoulder, you know, that anytime they're going to catch up with you. So that's the Man City side. So, however, like I've said, Sunderland, one of the defensively most organized teams that there is, you know. We saw how Liverpool struggled to penetrate them, you know. However, they are still penetratable because they've not kept a clean sheet in their last 5 games. Really, at least Man City have kept 1, and that was against Liverpool. So, but even be that as of it may, like I said, I do not think there's a Premier League team that would want to play Sunderland at this time, you know, and I don't think Man City is any different. But the fixtures come and they have to play it. So, what are the expectations? Of course, Sunderland has not been in the Premier League since 2016-2017. That's the last time they were in the league. And when you go back to the last 5 meetings between 2017 and 2015, when Sunderland were last in the Premier League, Manchester City won all those fixtures by 2-0 at the Stadium of Light. That was their very last meeting. That was on the 5th of March 2017. Earlier to that, in August 2016, Man City had beaten up against Sunderland by 2-1 at the Etihad Stadium. Then at the Stadium of Light, Man City, for the season prior to that, 15-16, the Man City went to the Stadium of Light, won by 0-0. The earlier fixture had ended in a 4-1 victory for Man City. So, and then there's a 3-2 victory in January 2015 for the 2014-2015 season. But that's the victory for Man City over Sunderland. So it's been so long a time, almost close on a decade to ever since they last met in the Premier League. But will that matter much? Because overall in 26 Premier League meetings, Man City have won 18 compared to Sunderland's 5. But like I said, we're talking about a different Sunderland altogether. This Sunderland side of Ballard, of Granit Xhaka, of Noah Sadiki, is a very, very strong team. Of Leafy, Robin Rofes, the goalkeeper, Mokele, Reynold Mandava, Adararete, Chamsdane Talabi. I think he's the one that combined with Isido to beat Chelsea. Bobby. So really, I do not want to think that Sunderland is a well-drilled side. And maybe they are. But because results have come good for them early in the season, that has given them the kind of confidence with which Leicester played in the 2015-2016 season. Because Claudio Ranieri promised them, I don't know, was it pizza at the end of every win or something? And the objective was to gather as many points. The objective was to get to 40 points to avoid any potential scare of relegation whatsoever. Now, once those 40 points came in time, I think they came either shortly or before the halfway point of the season. And then they decided, let's just keep going. And they kept going until they won the Premier League title. And I'm not saying Sunderland are going to win the Premier League title. And I'm not saying they are contenders, even though mathematically they are. But they've gotten good results so early in the season that it's given them the momentum and confidence to keep going, to keep coming at these teams. When you look at Sunderland's results, by the way, they've not lost against any of the top 6 sides they faced. I'm not saying big 6. I'm saying top 6. There's a difference, guys. They drew 2 against Arsenal. They beat Chelsea 2-1. I think against Aston Villa, if they've already played that game, wasn't it a goalless draw or a draw? It was 1-1 against Liverpool, and Liverpool are not even in the top 6, but they are the reigning champions. So I must add them to that sort of mix of the big teams that they've come up against. So really, you look at how they behave against some of these teams, and you're thinking to yourself, that's really, really good. Look at how they were against Liverpool. They really, really had to break down. Liverpool had a total of 23 shots. Only 4 of them were on target. Sunderland, meanwhile, had 9 shots and 6 were on target. So, and I remember Regis Libris saying that they were surprised. They had much of the ball, or they had a lot of time on the ball. Although they did not dominate possession, he said they had a lot of the ball, what they did not expect, that spaces to run into. Now, against Man City, you're not going to have a lot of that ball, really. You're not going to have it. But what you could have is spaces to run into, especially on the counter, because of how Man City overly commit numbers up front. We know how they like to play their expansive football and then push high up the pitch with the objective that if they do lose the ball, they can easily win it back. So in their last 5, Sunderland have a draw against Liverpool, against Arsenal, against Everton. They lost to Fulham by 0-0, and that victory against Bournemouth. They had to come from 2 goals down and win that one. Man City, They are conceding, but they're not losing. That's the difference. So ever since losing to Newcastle, they've won the last two. And Man City know what the motivations are. And I'm not saying, however, sometimes when you over concede, it's a sign that you're about to lose a game of football. When you're overly conceding. Does Sunderland get beat here? Brought Erling Haaland, Jeremy Doku, Bernardo Silva, Tijan Riendas, Nico Gonzalez. We know that Rodri is back, but they're just trying to be not too panicky with him. They're just trying not to rush him. Rico Reis, Matthias Nunes, Ruben Diaz, Joshko Vadiol, John Stones, Gianluigi Donnarumma. That composition of Man City's strong team. They can't get beat on any given day, as they can win on any given day. I don't know if I just have too much hope and believe in Pep Guardiola, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Manchester City. It will be difficult. It may be scrappy, but I think Man City could win. Of course, a draw wouldn't come as a surprise for me, but that's my gut feeling there. That's my gut feeling there. So I'm going to 1 Man City. And then it's been already 1 hour. It's already been 1 hour. Anyways, nonetheless, the late kickoff. The late kickoff, Liverpool away to Leeds. We won't go in huge depth for this one. We know that Leeds are in that sort of feel-good factor. They almost got a point away to Man City. They beat up against Chelsea. They're going to be at home at Elland Road. In recent times, there's been questions over Daniel Fekir with allegations that his job could be on the line. And here they are. They've managed to beat up against Chelsea. You come up against Liverpool. Liverpool are in that kind of phase where they have lost their fear factor, and any team can come up against them. And if you just need to you just need your confidence to carry you through, really. You just need your confidence to carry you through in that game. And that's what Leeds will need, because if anything, teams are proven Liverpool are not too hard to score against. You can defend well against them, because in many cases they've struggled to create clear-cut chances. Anna Slot says it's not as ugly as the media makes it sound, but maybe for a second he forgets that they are the reigning champions. So mathematically on the table, they're not too far off, like I keep saying. I think at 22 points, it's only 6 points that separate them and Man City. And so that makes what he says true, but you're the reigning champions. And you have to wait until match day 14 to draw your first game of the season. Not that they should be looking for draws, but I'm saying for them, the case is either we get beat or we beat you. So, and yet sometimes a point can be valuable. I've trusted Liverpool before and they've disappointed me. However, trusting Leeds also is like selling your soul. It's like selling your soul like a chicken trying to swallow a black ant. So really, I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool. I'm going to go 2-1. Sorry, not 2-1 Liverpool. Nah, I'm not that confident, but they can get the result. Let me see. There's a comment from son of Soweto from South Africa. Says, guess who's back? Again, I'm back. Tell a friend, guess who's back? Guess who's back? Soweto from South Africa. There. Good to have you. Who will win the AFCON? Morocco have a very huge chance. They're one of the best teams that there is on the continent. They're hosting the tournament. The last edition of the AFCON was won by the host. That was Ivory Coast, even though they had to scrap their way through it. I think Morocco has a huge chance. We can never rule out Tunisia. You know, because I think they've been really, really good in recent times. Did they even qualify? Could be here hyping them, and yeah, they're there in Group C with Uganda, Nigeria, and Tanzania. So Tunisia, a very, very good side. When you look at what they did in the World Cup qualifiers, they look a very, very decent side. I don't know. I don't think the trophy could go back to West Africa. I think it could head back to North Africa. It's not been there ever since Algeria won it. I don't think Egypt, even though with all their pedigree, will have much to say on it, but they could surprise you. We saw how they did in 2019 when they hosted it. Senegal is going to have a huge say in it. South Africa, as much as I love them, something just doesn't click for them oftentimes. They will play exciting football. They'll promise you that they are capable, and then suddenly it's just not it. So for me, I'll say Morocco are favorites to win it and could win it. Let's not forget, they reached the semi-finals of the World Cup just 3 years ago. So your prediction is that it will go to the Arabs. As hard or as bad as it sounds, depending on where you stand, I would say so, really. But thanks for your question. We know that the tournament does get underway this month. On the 21st of December, we know that European clubs have been given until the 15th to part ways with their players that belong to African ethnicity or that play for these African teams. And yesterday we were on the broadcast doing the watch along for that game between Man United and West Ham. And I was saying that Brandon Mbomo is going to go away for the World Cup, for the AFCON. West Ham are going to lose, what's his name? Aaron Wan-Bissaka to represent DRC Congo. Malik Diouf, Sunderland, we've just spoken about them. Chamsden Atalabi, who scored against Liverpool, is going to be leaving to go to the Moroccan national team. The likes of Noah Sadiki, Mukele, Mandava with Zimbabwe. So the Sunderland are going to lose a whole chunk of players going away. Man United will be without Amadou Diallo. I know that Cameroon have snapped, what's his name? Andre Onana, as well as Vincent Abubakar, Nigeria's captain, William Trust Ekong, has hung up his boots in as far as national team football is concerned. And you say, by the way, who is the highest ranking African team? I'm not particularly sure. I don't want to lie off of my fingertips, but I could look that up. In terms of best, is it best? Okay, best ranking African football teams, football national teams. So you do mention DRC Congo in some of your comments, but yeah, according to the continental rankings, it's Morocco. They're the first and 12th in the FIFA rankings. Then Senegal comes second, Egypt comes third, Algeria fourth, and Nigeria fifth. So that's the top 5. And I don't think I would contest that much. Morocco, Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, and Nigeria. I don't think I would contest that fact. Then you say, talking about DRC Congo, their number 8 is such a good player. Yeah, we've spoken about DRC Congo with you before, and I said DRC Congo is a very, very good side. They have a very good manager in Sebastian Desabre. They could be one of the dark horses of the tournament that could go really, really far in the tournament. Perhaps maybe up to the semi-finals. Who knows? Maybe even make it to the, to the finals. the last time you have to go back to, I think, 2016 when they won the Africa Nations Championship that was hosted in Rwanda. But on paper, they're a very, very good team. They have some experienced players, and with a good manager, anything can go for them. Don't you think that Nigeria is overrated? They have so much hope, but never really deliver. I do not think Nigeria is overrated. I think because they have very, very good players. Look at their attackers, look at their attacking force, and it's really one of the best there is on the continent. Victor Osimhen, Ademola Lookman, they have the good players, very, really, really good players. It's just that they've under-delivered. That's true. That's for sure that they've under-delivered over time. Then I think they've struggled with managers at sometimes, and then sometimes the problems at home sort of catch up with them. They often have internal fights in and amongst themselves in terms of administrative disorganization, which tends to cost them. So, but they have some really, really good players. Alex Iwobi at Fulham, I do not think they are overrated in that sense. I feel like they should have done better than Senegal. Yeah, but look at now what Senegal have present day is they have a high level of organization. They've been quite consistent. Cisse being as the leader of the Teranga Lions, I think they've had it good. So yeah, having good players is not enough, but it gives you an advantage because we know for a fact that peak Ivory Coast did not win anything until the Drogbas, literally retired, and then they eventually won it. Was it 2015 or 17 when they eventually win it? And then they won it in 2024. So really, it goes about, because if it was really about good players, South Africa, I mean, they literally have one of the best leagues there is on the continent. They are not short of good players, but those good players have oftentimes under-delivered on their expectations. So really, it goes beyond having just good players. You need a good coach, but also you also need luck. Like I keep saying, competing to win, whether it's tournaments, whether it's league titles and cup competitions, you need a bit of luck. You need certain decisions to go your way. You need your competitors to falter and fumble as you put in the shift, because we know that I remember making a point that AFCON 2023 that was played in 2024 was the best AFCON tournament I had ever watched. So many goals, a lot of good football. And if we can't get that, we know that ordinarily the difference between sides is often minimal. It ends up with a 1-0 win. Games are marginal, not so many goals, but the previous edition gave us a different version of that. You say, is it really luck? I don't think you need luck. I, for one, I think you need the luck more than you could care to admit. I'll give you an example. I go back to World Cup 2010 when Ghana gets knocked out at the quarterfinals at the hands of Uruguay. They just did not have luck. Otherwise, the opportunity was there for the taking. Asamoah Gyan misses that penalty, and everything changes. Also, go back to the 2023 AFCON edition that Ivory Coast win. They needed luck. You remember, they needed some teams to lose the final games of the group stage for them to be able to qualify as one of the third best teams. And that's how they get to the round of 16. That is luck, because it was out of their hand at that point. It was out of their hands at that point. So really, like I said, you need your opponents to falter sometimes. You say Nigerians are good when they are in other countries and playing in foreign clubs, but they have no capacity to manage themselves. I mean, you're talking about the three-time champions of Africa. That's much better than most teams can say for themselves. You know, really. And Nigeria are the record champions of the Under-17 World Cup 5 times. So, like I say, talent-wise, there's nothing to question about them. It's usually their disorganization here and there that, that causes them to falter, And look at how they get knocked out against DRC Congo in the recent World Cup qualifiers. There wasn't much that separated the two sides, really. In 2010, it wasn't luck for Uruguay. Ghana crumbled under pressure. I don't think they crumbled under pressure. I think they really, really took it well because that's a very experienced Ghana team. Suleiman Muntari, Kevin Prince Boateng, Asamoah Gyan. I really do not think so. I don't think it was crumbling under pressure. Again, if that goal goes in, the one that Luis Suarez stops, we would be talking about different history today. But it doesn't. And they get a resultant penalty. Hits the crossbar. And then he never falls for them. You say against Congo, Nigeria were outplayed by the Congolese. Now, I don't know why they made early substitutions. I think including Victor Osimhen, for whatever the reasons are. So, for me, I believe it's a combination of factors as to why you may win. When you look at around the continent, Cape Verde is one of those teams that plays very, very good football. Very entertaining football. But they are not just a winning nation. Go back to Zambia when they were winning, I think, AFCON 2012. Christopher Katongo and his brother Felix Katongo were part of that team. They were under the charges of Harvey Renard. And you'll see, they were not the most talented team. No. Not really. But they grinded it out and won. So, for me, when it comes to AFCON, look around. How many African teams have won that tournament back to back? Because you have to go back to 2006, 2008, and 2010 when Egypt won it 3 consecutive times. Ever since then, which nation has won it back to back? Remind me if I'm missing out on anything here. It's not easy to win, even when you have a very good team. We've seen teams falter. We've seen the likes of Algeria come to the tournament and falter. And yet, I do not think there's a single edition of AFCON where we've come and they do not have a good team. So, for me, I believe, so let me ask you a question. And coming from South Africa, what do you think South Africa doesn't win it or doesn't perform relatively well in this tournament? Is it the players? Is it the coaches? Or what? Because when it comes to the players, yeah, it is without question. You have the good players. So what fails South Africa? Because I think they've only won it once. And that was 1996. Uganda have never won it. They've been to the finals in 1978 Um, South Africa lacks the final element. What final element? What do you mean by final element? Is that on the pitch in terms of how they apply themselves in the final third, or what? You know, so I'm here thinking about my Uganda Cranes, and they're in a Group C where you have Tunisia, who won it in 2004. Nigeria, who last won it, I think, in 2015, are three-time champions, including, I think, 85 or so. And Tanzania, who have equally never won it. And I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be a huge mountain climb for the Cranes. It is that which differentiates the top tier teams and the rest. So, but at least you do agree that it has nothing to do with player quality. When it comes to managers or coaches, I think South Africa has the capability to afford even the very best that there is on and off of the continent. I saw Uganda playing in the East African competition. What East African competition? Because the last competition we played in was the CHAN, African Nations Championship. Anyways, guys, so I did not conclude my prediction for Leeds Liverpool. As a result of a slip of a tongue, I went Liverpool winning 2-1, but I don't know. When I predict Liverpool to win, they disappoint me. When I predict them to lose, they decide to win. Maybe let me wish Liverpool fans well by predicting a 2-1 victory for Leeds United. For the rest of the games, we'll tackle them tomorrow morning when we meet that will be Saturday morning. So it says it's a lot to do with player quality. Player quality, again, for me, of course, there's difference in quality for respective teams. For example, when you come up against the Comoros and Madagascar, who did well in the previous tournament, when you come up against a Uganda, a Tanzania, a Kenya, in comparison to North African teams and West African teams, and South Africa itself, usually there's a disparity. But sometimes tactically managers get it wrong, and it's less to do with the players. So it's not a single factor that sort of defines it all to say that this one is failing. Like I said, for me, I believe for you to win, you must put in the hard work. You must have the luck. The luck comes with not getting injuries to your key players. Luck comes with getting away with certain decisions that are sometimes 50-50 or are decisions that on another day you would not get. Luck comes when your opponents, in terms of competitors, direct title competitors, falter. So really, those are elements that, because the reason as why you need to put in the hard work at the shift is that you must position yourself to leverage on the misfortunes of your competitors. And that's how I look at it. Anyways, guys, we've been such a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Every single one of you that has been part of today's broadcast. Thank you so much, Soweto. Thank you so much, Imran. And every single one of you that was able to join us for this Friday morning broadcast. It's 4 minutes past 11 a.m. Allow me go tend to my other duties as well. Let's catch up later tonight at around 9 p.m. and see how it goes. Stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.